The Starlost. Long forgotten gem of early 70s low-budget sci-fi, produced in Canada, created by Harlan Ellison, scientifically consulted by hard sci-fi author Ben Bova, and starring Keir Dullea of 2001: A Space Odyssey fame. Now available in complete series form on DVD from VCI Entertainment. And that's what we're going to talk about today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. Boy, this is a show I didn't think we would ever see on DVD, but it just goes to show, never say never, because even the most unlikely things tend to show up eventually if you wait long enough. Wow. Yeah, so the Starlost was actually created in the early 70s as the brainchild of famed science fiction author Harlan Ellison, and the whole idea was he wanted to produce a science fiction series that was a proper, real, hard sci-fi series. You know, hard sci-fi versus soft sci-fi. Soft sci-fi is like space opera and Star Wars type stuff. Even Star Trek could be considered somewhat soft sci-fi with some slight hard sci-fi elements to them. Hard sci-fi, the big difference with that is it bases a lot of its science in science fiction on actual scientific theories and ideas and such. So you'll find that the science aspects of hard SF tend to be a lot more plausible and believable and possible. So the whole idea of the Starlost was to create, for the first time ever, a proper, serious, hard sci-fi series. Now they were originally going to do it, I guess, as a season-long miniseries. It was going to be 24 episodes, but it got cut off at 16. Why did it get cut off at 16? Well, to say that the Starlost was plagued with production problems right from the moment go would be something of an understatement. Alas, they just couldn't get the support that they needed to really make it the way they wanted to, and there was a lot of creative differences behind the scenes, and in the end, the final product that resulted was nowhere near as epic and grandiose as they had originally intended it to be. When you watch it, the first thing you notice is the entire thing is shot on videotape, and the vast majority of effects are done using chroma key, or blue screen, or green screen, or yellow screen, whatever, you know, chroma key. So you would see the actors in front of really obvious models. Like they would have little miniature models for the sets and then blue screen the actors into that, and it was really obvious most of the time. Now here's the thing, I mean, I grew up watching stuff like Doctor Who, Blake 7, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, etc. So I was no stranger to low budget sci-fi, and in fact I enjoy it quite a bit. And you know, having been born and bred on that sort of thing, I think I can say safely that I tend to be a little more forgiving about ultra low budget productions like that, and tend to judge the shows on other merits. So in the case of the Starlost, you really can't give it too much kudos in terms of effects, because the effects are pretty awful. And the funny thing is, the effects were originally supervised by none other than Douglas Trumbull. Douglas Trumbull, I'm not even going to give you a list. Just go and IMDb him, seriously. Like, this guy has done so many sci-fi movies over the years. One of the big ones would probably be Silent Running, that you guys know. And you'll notice, we're going to look at the intro in just a minute here. You'll notice some design similarities between the Starlost and Silent Running. No coincidence there, I'm sure, given that Mr. Trumbull worked on both. But essentially what ended up happening was the extent of his involvement was he shot some model work of the main spaceship of the series and then took off. I'm guessing something to do with the aforementioned creative differences, or maybe they just couldn't afford to keep him on the production because he was pretty big in Hollywood at the time. Who knows? So, how do you judge the Starlost? Well, essentially, with any type of show like this, really the only way you can judge it is on the strength of the stories, the characters, and the acting. And Starlost, honestly, is a bit of a mixed bag. It's got some really good episodes, and it's got some really bad episodes too. Overall, the acting's pretty solid. I mean, Keir Dullea, obviously is in fine form here. I mean, this was only, what? This was done in 1973, so this is 5 years. 5 years after he did 2001, so he's still pretty young, and I mean, he's a smart guy. And when he saw this project, it was obviously something that intrigued him and that he wanted to be a part of, and he stuck with it. I mean, he stuck with it right to the bitter end. So, big kudos to Mr. DeLay and all the rest of the main cast as well. And you can see, I mean, even with the at times rather shaky material that he's being given to perform as an actor, he gives it his all, and he really throws himself into it. And, you know, to be fair, people give the Starlost a lot of slack because, you know, they don't see past the low budget, or they don't see past the fact that it just didn't quite manage to achieve that level of greatness that they were shooting for. But, you know, honestly, I just finished watching all 16 episodes last week, and honestly, I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people make it out to be. You know, I mean, there is some good stuff to be found in there, and if you're like me and you enjoy a good low-budget sci-fi from the 70s every once in a while, you might want to give Starlost a try. I mean, if you like old-school Doctor Who and old-school British sci-fi, you know, the Tomorrow People would be another really low-budget one from the same year. The Starlost is worth a look. I mean, if only out of curiosity. Because for all the good intentions of it, some brilliance does shine through from time to time, but unfortunately the production problems and creative differences behind the scenes really took their toll on the series overall. In fact, Harlan Ellison, anybody who's a fan of Harlan Ellison will know what this means, but Harlan Ellison took his name off the credits because he was just so disgusted with how the production was going, and instead allowed to be credited under his pseudonym of Cordwainer Bird. Now, anybody who knows Harlan Ellison or is a fan of Harlan Ellison knows what Cordwainer Bird means. Basically, the long and the short of it is, that's the pseudonym that he uses when he is especially displeased with how something he was involved in has gone. So, an interesting side note, he did actually publish a book called, was it Phoenix from the Ashes, or Phoenix Without Ashes, or something like that. Anyway, it was basically a novelization of his original unaltered pilot script, which one of his primary complaints at the time was that his pilot script was tinkered with quite a bit and did not appear on screen in anywhere near the same form that he had written it. Yeah, one of many reasons where he left the production. Ben Bova, however, Ben Bova being a huge giant in the world of hard sci-fi. Check out some of his stuff. It's really, really good. He, I guess, was a little bit too late to get his name taken off the production, so you'll find his name in the credits of all 16 episodes as the scientific consultant. Even though some of the science is a little dubious. It doesn't quite hit those hard SF high notes all the time. So without any further ado, let's take a quick look at the intro to the Starlost, which will give you a little bit of info about what the basic story is. So, yeah, without any further ado, let's take a look. Here's the intro from the opening episode of the Starlost.
Earthship Ark, man's greatest and final achievement, out of control, drifting through deep space over 800 years into the far future. Its passengers, descendants of the last survivors of the dead planet Earth, locked in separate worlds, their destination long forgotten. Heading for destruction unless 3 young people can save the Starlost.
Pretty cool, eh? if you were trying to read Keir Dulley's lips in his little shot there, what he's saying is actually never. So go back and watch it and just pretend you're hearing him say never. It's a shot from one of the first 2 episodes. I think it's from the first episode. Anyway, you notice that they show one of the guest stars on there. One of the things that's notable about the Starlost was the rather surprising list of guest stars. Longtime sci-fi fans will see a lot of familiar faces in there, one of which being John Colicos from Battlestar Galactica. He, of course, played Baltar on the original Battlestar Galactica series and did a lot of sci-fi. He was in the original Star Trek as a Klingon that appeared in at least 1 or 2 episodes. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've watched them. But yeah, anyway, longtime vet of sci-fi, and he is sorely missed. He actually passed away a few years ago, but he played some great baddies. I remember he also had a recurring character that appeared in a couple episodes of War of the Worlds TV series from the late 80s. Good stuff there. Speaking of Star Trek, another guest star that appeared in a couple episodes was none other than Chekhov himself. Walter Koenig played an evil alien named Oro, who was trying to take over the Ark. So, pretty cool stuff. His episodes were actually pretty good. And there's a scene in particular in his second appearance where he gets into a battle of wills with Devon, who's Keir Dulley's character, over who is more well-suited to command the Ark. It's being presided over by a robot computer who's basically judging their arguments and scoring points one side or the other based on the weight of their logic. And whoever loses the argument will get atomized. So there's a lot at stake. There's the leadership of the Ark at stake, which is a big deal by this point, and one of them is going to be killed, like, without question. So it's a great, tense Battle of Wills scene. That, I would say, is definitely one of the high points of the series, is when Devon and Oro face off in that Battle of Wills. That's top-notch quality sci-fi entertainment right there. It was great stuff. So essentially, from the intro there, you can see what the general plot is. The last survivors of humanity have left a doomed Earth in this gigantic spaceship called the Ark, and they're basically heading out into space to find a new home. But there's been an accident. While everybody was happily living their lives in their biodomes, there was an accident that sent the Ark hurtling off course straight for a Class G star. So basically it's going to plunge into a sun somewhere. Here's the problem. Several hundred years have passed since the accident, and a lot of people in the biodomes have forgotten they're even on a spaceship. The original concept was everybody forgot, but that was changed slightly. Over the course of the series, you find some people are still aware that they're on a spaceship, others aren't. The community that Devon and his friends come from are completely unaware that they're on a spaceship. They're in like this sort of Amish community. They find their way out and into the Ark, and they're just like, whoa, what the hell is going on? So it's actually pretty cool to see how it all unfolds and how they learn and adapt to this alien environment that they just aren't accustomed to. They've never known anything like it their entire lives. And they're pretty smart, and they catch on pretty quick and get the gist of what's going on. And essentially it's their efforts to try to find the bridge or some kind of navigation system to steer the Ark back onto a safe course. And then of course they encounter the inhabitants of other biodomes over the course of that as well, some of which are helpful and some of which, try to kill them. So does the series actually have a finite ending? Well, one assumes it would have if they'd been able to do that final 8 episodes and done the full batch of 24, but unfortunately we get cut off at episode 16. Now, that said, the final episode, if you interpret events a certain way, could be taken as a pretty final ending for our heroes, and a rather depressing one, but where it would have gone from there, we have no idea. No idea, and we'll probably never know. It's unfortunate. A lot of fans on the IMDb message boards have said that The Starlost is a show that could really use a remake, because the core concept was a sound concept, with a lot of storytelling potential, and it just wasn't fully realized with the production problems of the time. So, who knows? Maybe we'll see the Starlost revisited at some point in time. Now, I've talked about the show itself quite a bit. I didn't mean to go on about it quite so long, but what can I say? I like it, and I think there's a lot of good to be found there, along with the bad. And if you like low-budget sci-fi, you might want to give it a look. So we're going to split this into 2 parts. So next time, we'll talk about the DVD set itself, and also how it's been available on home video prior to this set, and why this set is so cool and special and awesome, and Starlost fans like me are overjoyed and just wetting themselves over it. Figuratively, not literally. Well, maybe some of them literally, but yeah, we'll just leave them to deal with that on their own. Anyway, that's it from me to you for now, so see you for part 2 of the Starlost DVD review next time. Until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara.